My name is Mohammed Khalifa. I'm from Corteva Agriscience, and I started here about a year ago. It is my pleasure today to be moderating the higher ed panel for career panels for the Predict Symposium. And it's my pleasure today to be joined by Dr. Don Brunson, who did his PhD at MIT and is now the Assistant Dean of the Graduate School at Vanderbilt, and Director of the EDGE program, which stands for Enhancing Diversity in Graduate Education. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Brunson, as well as Dr. Roderick Macrae, who did his PhD at the University of Glasgow and is now a Leiter Endowed Professor of Chemistry at Marian University. Dr. Michelle Nolan, who did their PhD at the University of Florida and is now a chemical science librarian at the University of Florida with the Marston Science Library. Dr. Danielle Jacobs-Duda is possibly joining us a little later. It sounds like there's a storm in New Jersey, which has cut out her connection, but she's got her PhD from UNC Chapel Hill and is now the Associate Professor of Chemistry, an Associate Professor of Chemistry at Rider University and the Director of STEM Scholars. So hopefully she'll be able to join us a little later into the session. I'll kick us off with just a question for those of us who might not be familiar with your specific organization or your specific role. Can you please tell us about what you do and kind of how it fits into the bigger picture at your organization? And let's start off with Michelle, if you can kick it off.
Sure. So hi, yeah, I'm Michelle. So I am a chemistry librarian at the Marston Science Library, which if you're not aware of making contact with your science librarians, I always tell people to make sure you do that because I really didn't have any knowledge or contact with mine while I was a graduate student. And it's something that now in retrospect, I really wish I had done. So what I do is most of my work involves teaching people how to find different types of information, connecting them with difficult resources. I do a lot of instruction on using the science databases and things like that. I also make collection purchases for the chemical science areas. So chemistry, chemical engineering, and material science. I'm like the point person for all of our materials in that area. And it's kind of hard to like say what librarian duties are because every day is different. But it's really nice when people come in to tell me about their research and I get to help them find stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's move to Dr. Macrae.
Hi, I'm Rod Macrae, and I'm a professor of chemistry at Marian University, Indianapolis. I've been teaching there for almost 20 years. So my job primarily is a teaching job. So it's a primarily undergraduate institution, as it has been since I started. But it's undergone a lot of growth. And so when I joined Marian, it was really a sort of tiny, it was actually called Marian College back then. It was a tiny college of with about 1,200 students. It's about 10 years ago, we added a medical school, and we're now at about an enrollment. We have more than one campus, and we're at an enrollment of over 4,000, and we're about to open a school of engineering. So everything is changing all the time at Marian. So my life is kept pretty interesting. Our department has been growing, and that's good. And, we've been, but my job is primarily teaching. So I teach quite a lot of classes, and I do pursue quite a lot of research, primarily with undergraduate students as well. And also, because it's still a small university, everybody is involved in everything. And so I do, I end up on a lot of committees and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's an interesting life.
Great, thanks. Dr. Brunson?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don Brunson. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Graduate School at Vanderbilt and also the Director of the Enhancing Diversity in Graduate Education program. So I started out my undergraduate career as a chemistry major at Morgan State University in Baltimore, which is my hometown. And then I went on to do a PhD in toxicology at MIT. And afterwards, I did a postdoc at in pharmacology and molecular sciences doing HIV research at the Hopkins School of Medicine. Now, the whole time that I was doing that, or I should say the whole time, many years as both a graduate student and a postdoc, I had undergraduate students working for me. So I got to learn how to teach and mentor and knowing about the different roles of mentor, because it's not contrary to what most people talk about, a one person fits everything. There are different roles you can have: a coach, an advocate, a connector, etc. And then after I finished my postdoc, I changed my career path and became a scientist on staff and one of the assistant directors of undergraduate admissions at MIT, where my responsibility was, how do I help the university ensure that it has proper representation of students from underrepresented backgrounds as well as women in STEM fields. And after that role, I went back to my home institution to work in the president's office. I was a special assistant in the office of the president, and my job was I was basically a one-man think tank. So I would have problems thrown at me, because that's what we do as scientists. We solve problems, as well as, and one of the biggest problems that I was working with was getting high achieving students in the state to come to my university, as well as how do we have representation for all students across the state of Maryland. How do we make sure that there's access to education? And then after a couple of years of doing that, the president said, I think I want you to take over the honors program. And I said, oh, Mr. President, thank you so much, but I'm fine up here in the presidential suite. So he said, that might be, but I'm getting to this job. Well, let me just pack my stuff and get myself over to honors. And I did that, and it was a pleasure. I was working with undergraduate students who were domestic, international. How do we help them be prepared for the best opportunities, whether it's in academia, or whether it's in a government or in corporate world? How do we make sure they're prepared? And then that led me to this transition to Vanderbilt, where I'm working across the country, mostly domestic students, again, in the diversity realm, students from underrepresented backgrounds, ethnic minorities, first generation, low income, veterans, students with disability, women in all STEM fields. So how do we find them, get them to our program? And then my responsibility is working with them to make sure that they get their degree on time and with their sanity. So that's on the recruitment and the retention part. Because, you know, this PhD education things where you're asked to create and add new knowledge to the world, it's a big deal.
That's great. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I saw one in Huva, but I think it's for the government panel, so we'll skip over that one. I guess I'll move on to another one of my questions, which is maybe tell us about one of the most interesting or exciting challenges you're currently tackling within your role, and maybe, you know, if it relates to a bigger mission with the organization, that's great. But just kind of tell me what you're working on right now. Let's start with Dr. Nolan.
So many things. Okay, I will say that one of the things I'm working on right now that I'm personally really excited about is we have been developing basically a circulating library collection of technology. So one of my biggest missions here in the library is to democratize access to tech. So right now we've built up a whole set of basically virtual reality equipment and 360 cameras. We have podcasting kits, a whole lot. But basically it's really exciting to me to be able to put that kind of expensive technology in students' hands at no cost to them. And it's been really rewarding to see the type of projects that people come up with when they have access to those things, because I'm always thinking about removing as many barriers as possible to people being able to succeed in their academics, but also in any kind of creative projects that they have or any other passions that they want to pursue. So we have a huge 3D printing lab here in the science library. We also started circulating 3D printers that people can check out and take home. So if they want to learn how to, actually do the prints themselves. And it's just really exciting to me. So that is one of the big projects I'm working on. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second half of the question? Was it challenging things?
Yeah, just kind of thinking about what challenges you might be working on individually, but then also kind of how does that fit into maybe the mission of the organization that you work for, or yeah, how
Mhm.
does it fit into the big picture?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest challenges that I'm trying to play my part in helping to maybe not solve, but progress at this point is that a lot of, especially the first year graduate students, I remember being in this position where you get thrown into a research project and you just don't know where to start, and you kind of feel like you can't ask your advisor, whether it's out of being embarrassed or whatever it is. Um, I have been working really hard to try and make contact with all of those first year students so that if they feel like there's something that they just don't know how to do and don't know where to start, that there's someone that they can reach out to that can help aid in all of that stuff that has, no place on their committee, no place in grading any of their courses, and can just be like a lifeline. Because um, I think a lot of times professors forget that you have to learn these skills. So doing a literature search, or just like generally being able to find and use academic information is something that people take for granted once they know how to do it. And I am trying very hard to make contact in helping people develop those skills in a place where they won't ever feel judged for it. Because like I said, I was there and I just like sink or swim jumped into trying to figure it out. And it took me a long time, to get there. So I'm trying to help make those stepping stones for people.
That's great. I'm going to pause for 1 second because I'm informed that Dr. Jacobs Duda is here. She's able to join us on the phone line. So Dr. Jacobs Duda, welcome. We're very happy to have you. The question that is on the board right now is tell us about kind of an interesting or exciting challenge you're currently tackling within your role. And if it fits into a broader mission with your organization, how it fits into that. If you are able to and want to join us in on this question, I'll hand it over to you. Maybe not. Maybe we'll come back. Either that or you're muted and we can't hear you. That's okay. Michelle, we're going to follow up with a question from the Q&A from JB, who says, I may have missed it, but did you have to do formal training for your role in library science? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I actually didn't. So I did my PhD in chemistry. I actually was doing organometallic synthesis. And for my position, and for anybody who's interested in going into like chemistry librarianship specifically, oftentimes they're looking to hire chemists, like with chemistry training. And that's because unlike a lot of other library resources, chemistry information is very visual and it requires that you can speak the language of chemistry. So in order to be able to effectively find things, you have to understand structures, you have to understand very specific domain knowledge. But there was a lot that I learned on the job. So there's pretty much two main paths to chemistry librarianship. There's the PhD and then kind of a lot of on-the-job stuff that I picked up from really excellent colleagues. And then there is either some other background degree in chemistry followed by the Masters of Library Science. I've seen people come through it both ways.
Excellent, thank you. Brad, let's move to you. The question was, tell us about an interesting challenge or problem maybe that you're working on currently.
So, well, for me, there's, I guess I can talk about what I'm working on, what I'm involved in, and also what the institution is currently involved in a little bit. And so from my own, well, the two things are interconnected. So the one thing that's going on right now is that we're rebuilding, we always seem to be doing this, we're rebuilding our general education program. And so chemistry is part of the general education program. So our general chemistry course is for science majors. Most of them will take that as part of the general education program. So I'm being kind of forced to rethink chemistry from that point of view. And, and thinking about it, I've realized that in a way, I've always had that kind of perspective on it. That's, thinking about chemistry from the point of view of how it changes your way of thinking, how it gives you a certain perspective on the world. And so how it can be something for everyone to learn and something important. We're also all engaged in a certain amount of training, an association with this rebuilding of the gender education program, and sort of diversity, equity, inclusion, all those kinds of topics, and various other topics that are related to the university's mission and all of that stuff. So that's keeping a lot of people very busy right now, including myself. Then another thing that will impact us in chemistry for sure going forward, although it hasn't really taken off yet, is that we are going to be starting the School of Engineering. And so we're beginning to get students enrolling who are going to be engineers, and that's going to, most of them will be taking chemistry, at least introductory classes. So that's going to really increase the number of chemistry students passing through our programs, and it's going to create big challenges for us in terms of lab space and all that kind of stuff. So these are all things that are going on right now. I'm also involved in other things that are not really chemistry related. So, for example, I'm on a faculty committee that works on the faculty handbook, and that's just like one of those things that just goes on forever. So these are the various things that are engaging me at the moment.
18-ish or so months, the country's been really dealing with a lot of problems regarding issues of social justice, race, and economics, economic standing, and health disparities. So we've learned that a lot of students, chemistry students are no different, are concerned about issues of social justice. And, not everybody wants to, be out in a protest or something like that. That's just not some people's personality, and it's not even how they want to serve. And so the challenge is, how do you address that? So in a couple of weeks, I've convened a panel of faculty from across the country. These are, I've got 8 faculty members. They're African American, Native American, Latino, Latina, Asian American, Pacific Islanders, men and women. Some of them identify or have strong identities in the LGBTQI spectrum. They're from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving universities, predominantly white institutions, as well as Native American,